Emma had always been the quiet one in her office. She wasn't the type to draw attention or speak loudly in meetings, but she had a kind and warm personality that everyone noticed once they got to know her. Her days were usually filled with paperwork, emails, and the occasional small chat with coworkers during lunch breaks. She liked her routine. It was peaceful, predictable, and comfortable. But one seemingly ordinary day, something small would happen that changed the way everyone in the office saw her, at least for a moment. It started during a regular Monday morning meeting. The office conference room was buzzing with the usual energy. People were shuffling papers, checking their phones, and sipping coffee. Emma sat quietly at the corner of the table, her notebook open, ready to jot down any important points. The team manager was talking about upcoming deadlines and projects, moving from one topic to another with his usual fast pace. Emma listened carefully, paying attention to details that many others missed. She had a sharp mind, even if she didn't always show it. As the meeting went on, the room filled with the usual chatter and occasional laughter. Someone made a joke about a missed deadline last week, and a few coworkers laughed loudly, slapping their desks and pointing at each other. Emma couldn't help but smile at their energy, but she kept her attention on the notes in front of her. Then it happened. Emma reached over to grab her pen from her bag, and her sleeve rolled up slightly. It revealed a small, delicate tattoo on her forearm. A tiny design, almost hidden, but beautiful in its simplicity. It was a small emblem, nothing flashy or extravagant, yet it had a meaning that was far bigger than its size. Almost immediately, the atmosphere in the room shifted. Some of her coworkers leaned back in their chairs, smirking. "Look at that," someone whispered, a hint of mockery in their voice. Another chuckled, trying to hide it behind a cough. Emma noticed, but she didn't pull her sleeve down. She was used to people staring or making small jokes. She had grown comfortable with herself and the choices she had made, no matter what anyone else thought. The teasing started softly at first. "Is that supposed to be art?" someone joked. Another added, "Looks like a sticker you'd get from a magazine." A few others laughed nervously, unsure if they should join in. Emma felt a tiny pang of embarrassment, but she remembered why she had gotten the tattoo in the first place. It wasn't for attention. It wasn't to impress anyone. It was personal, meaningful, and connected to something she held dear in her heart. Despite the whispers, Emma remained calm. She smiled politely, her eyes calm and steady, showing no sign of anger or frustration. Inside, she felt a mixture of emotions. Slight embarrassment, yes, but also pride. This tattoo represented something incredibly important. Her father. He was a man of courage, integrity, and honor. He had served in the military for decades and had taught her valuable lessons about bravery, loyalty, and living a life true to oneself. The tattoo was a miniature version of an emblem her father had worn, something she wanted to keep close to her as a reminder of him and his teachings. Emma had been thinking about her father a lot recently. He had passed away a few years ago, and she often felt his absence keenly in her daily life. The tattoo was a way to honor him, to carry a piece of his legacy wherever she went. It was more than just ink on her skin. It was a symbol of everything he had taught her, from the small acts of kindness to the courage to stand up for what was right. As the meeting continued, Emma focused on her notes, trying to ignore the murmurs and sideways glances. She knew that her coworkers' laughter came from misunderstanding or superficial judgment. They didn't know the story behind the tiny design, the love and respect it represented, or the pride she felt in carrying a tribute to her father. To them, it was just a small, simple tattoo, something to tease her about. But to Emma, it was a connection to her past, a symbol of her values, and a reminder of who she was. By the end of the meeting, some coworkers had moved on, but a few still whispered and exchanged glances. Emma didn't react. She had learned long ago that people will judge what they don't understand. The small tattoo on her forearm didn't need to be explained to everyone. It only needed to mean something to her. She rolled her sleeve down slightly, adjusted her notebook, and returned to her work. The whispers faded, but the memory of that moment lingered in her mind. It was a small, ordinary day, and the tattoo was tiny and subtle, but it had started a chain of events that would soon surprise everyone in the office. Emma didn't know it yet, but this little emblem on her arm, something she wore quietly and proudly, would soon capture the attention of someone who truly understood its meaning, and change the way everyone in the room saw her forever. Emma's tattoo wasn't just a piece of decoration on her arm. It carried a story, a memory, and a connection that ran deep. While her coworkers had laughed at the small design, Emma knew its true meaning, and that knowledge gave her a quiet strength. She often thought about her father, a man whose life and values were etched into every part of her being. The tattoo she wore was more than ink. It was a symbol of the lessons he had taught her, a tribute to a man she loved and admired deeply. Her father had been a retired military officer, someone who had dedicated his life to service, discipline, and honor. Emma remembered how, as a child, she would sit by his side as he told stories of his experiences. Tales of courage under pressure, moments where a single choice could change the outcome of a mission, and lessons about integrity that went far beyond any schoolbook. He had a way of teaching through stories, making her feel the weight of responsibility, but also the importance of standing firm in the face of challenges. The tattoo itself was a small emblem, a miniature version of a medal that her father had earned decades ago. It was tiny, delicate, and almost easy to overlook. But that was the point. It wasn't meant to be flashy or impressive to others. It was meant to carry meaning, a quiet reminder of values that mattered more than appearances. Every time Emma looked at it, she remembered her father's words about courage and honor. She thought about how he had always taught her that true strength wasn't shown in loud displays or vanity, but in quiet actions and consistency of character. Emma had chosen to get the tattoo shortly after her father passed away. She wanted a way to carry a part of him with her, to honor the life he had lived and the lessons he had shared. To her, the tiny design was a daily reminder of the strength that had been instilled in her from a young age. It reminded her to be brave in difficult situations, to act with integrity, and to respect those who had walked the path before her. Every time she caught a glimpse of it while typing at her desk or reaching for a pen, she felt a sense of connection, a whisper of encouragement from her father's memory. She also remembered the day she decided to get it. It had been a quiet afternoon, the kind of day where the world feels both heavy and serene. She had gone to a small tattoo studio in the city, a place that felt welcoming and peaceful. The artist had asked her what she wanted, and she had explained the story behind the emblem. She told him how it represented her father, how it carried values that shaped her life, and how it was a tribute she wanted to keep close. The artist listened carefully, nodding, understanding that this wasn't just a tattoo. It was a symbol of legacy and love. When he finished, Emma looked at the small emblem on her arm and felt a surge of peace and pride. In her daily life, the tattoo had become a quiet part of her identity. She didn't show it off to anyone, nor did she seek validation for it. It was personal, private, and precious. But she noticed how people around her often judged based on appearances alone. They couldn't see the story, the memories, or the depth behind the small design. To them, it was tiny, meaningless, perhaps even childish. But to Emma, it held the weight of decades of wisdom, courage, and sacrifice. Sometimes she would think about how different people responded to tattoos in general. Some saw them as bold statements, others as rebellious acts. But Emma's tattoo was none of these things. It was a tribute, a memory, a way to carry her father's spirit with her as she navigated her own life. Even when people laughed or whispered, Emma didn't feel anger or resentment. She felt calm, because she knew the truth. The tattoo's meaning wasn't for them, it was for her, and that was enough. The more she thought about it, the more she realized how much this tiny emblem represented her own journey, not just her father's life. It was about remembering one's roots, understanding the values that shaped them, and carrying that knowledge into every decision they made. It reminded her to be patient, to stay humble, and to act with courage even when others didn't understand. In a way, the tattoo became a compass, guiding her through challenges at work, in relationships, and in life. Emma also cherished the quiet moments when she could reflect on the significance of the tattoo. Sometimes, late at night, she would look at it and feel her father's presence nearby. It was a reminder that love and guidance don't disappear with death. They linger in memories, in actions, and in the symbols we choose to carry. The tattoo was her way of keeping that guidance alive, visible only to herself but powerful enough to influence every decision she made. Even though her coworkers didn't know the story, Emma didn't mind. She understood that people often judge what they cannot see or understand. Her small tattoo carried the wisdom, courage, and love of someone who had shaped her life profoundly. It wasn't about proving anything to anyone else. It was about honoring a legacy that she wanted to carry forward. And so, while the office whispered and laughed about her tiny tattoo, Emma remained calm and proud. She knew its meaning, its depth, and its power. The tattoo wasn't just ink. It was a connection, a memory, and a symbol of everything her father had taught her. And little did she know, this quiet, personal symbol would soon capture the attention of someone who truly understood its significance, changing the way everyone around her saw her, and the story behind that tiny emblem, forever. Even though Emma carried her tattoo with quiet pride, not everyone in the office understood its meaning. Some of her coworkers, especially those who liked to joke or tease, couldn't resist making comments. It started subtly, snickers, sideways glances, and whispered jokes whenever her sleeve accidentally rolled up. At first, it was easy for Emma to ignore them. She had learned over time that people often mocked what they didn't understand, and this small, delicate tattoo was deeply personal. But as days passed, the teasing began to grow. During lunch breaks, a few coworkers would make casual remarks. "That's the tiniest tattoo I've ever seen," one of them said, trying to sound funny. Another added, "I can't even tell what it's supposed to be. It looks like a doodle." A few others laughed along, pointing at her arm and making exaggerated gestures. Emma felt a mix of emotions. She didn't want to get angry or defensive, but a part of her wondered why they couldn't just leave her alone. After all, it was a personal choice, not an invitation for judgment. Despite the teasing, Emma stayed composed. She had always believed that strength wasn't about showing off or confronting people aggressively. True strength, she thought, was staying calm in the face of ridicule and knowing your own worth. Her tattoo wasn't for them. It was for her. A tribute to her father and the lessons he had instilled in her. Each time she glanced at the small emblem, she felt a sense of courage and reassurance. It reminded her that her value didn't depend on anyone else's opinion. Emma's father had always taught her about integrity and humility. He had said, "People will judge you by what they see, not what's inside. Never let their ignorance decide your worth." Those words echoed in her mind as she endured the subtle teasing. She realized that most of her coworkers didn't know the story behind the tattoo. They couldn't see the history, the emotions, or the love that made it so meaningful. To them, it was a small mark on her skin. To Emma, it was a connection to someone who had shaped her life in profound ways. At work, Emma noticed how the teasing sometimes created awkward situations. During team meetings, a few coworkers would sneak glances at her arm whenever she gestured. "Watch out! Don't let the doodle distract you," someone whispered jokingly. Others would chuckle, shaking their heads. Emma kept her expression calm and professional, choosing to focus on her work rather than the jokes. Inside, though, she reminded herself of her father's lessons. She knew she didn't need their approval or understanding. Her tattoo carried a story they couldn't grasp, and that was enough. Emma also reflected on why the tattoo meant so much to her. It was more than just a reminder of her father's courage. It symbolized the values he had taught her: loyalty, resilience, and quiet strength. Every time someone laughed or pointed, it reminded her that her path was different from theirs. She didn't seek attention, but she carried a legacy. The tattoo was a way to honor that legacy, silently asserting that her strength didn't have to be loud to be real. Sometimes the teasing felt more personal. A few coworkers would make comments about her personality, suggesting that someone with such a small, delicate tattoo couldn't possibly be brave or strong. Emma felt a sting in those moments, but she refused to let it affect her. She had learned to separate her self-worth from other people's shallow judgments. Her father's words came back to her again. Strength is not measured by what others think. It is measured by how you stay true to yourself. At the same time, Emma began to notice that not everyone joined in the teasing. Some coworkers remained neutral, simply observing without judgment. These quiet colleagues often gave her small smiles of encouragement, subtle signs that they respected her choices even if they didn't fully understand the tattoo. Their support, though minimal, helped her feel that she wasn't entirely alone in the office. Emma also found comfort in the moments when she could think about the bigger picture. The tattoo wasn't just about the office or what her coworkers thought. It was about her connection to her father and the life lessons he had left behind. It reminded her to act with courage in difficult situations, to remain humble when faced with ridicule, and to carry herself with integrity regardless of others' opinions. It was a constant, quiet encouragement that strengthened her resolve. One afternoon, while Emma was reviewing a report, a coworker made another snide remark about the tattoo. Instead of reacting, she took a deep breath and smiled politely, then turned her attention back to the work in front of her. She realized that the teasing would not define her day or her self-worth. The tattoo was her story, and she would not let anyone else's misunderstanding take that away. By the end of the week, the subtle mockery had continued, but Emma felt a growing sense of confidence. She knew that someday, the meaning behind her tattoo would be recognized by someone who truly understood its significance. For now, she focused on her work, her values, and the lessons her father had instilled in her. The whispers and laughter of her coworkers were fleeting, but the pride and connection she felt every time she glanced at her tiny emblem were lasting and powerful. Little did Emma know, her quiet endurance and the personal story behind her tattoo would soon come to light in a way that would astonish everyone in the office, showing that strength and meaning are not always loud or obvious. They can be found in the smallest symbols and the quietest actions. The office had been humming with its usual rhythm, but that week brought an unusual excitement. The company had invited a high-ranking retired General Hamilton, to attend a ceremonial award presentation. This was a rare event, one that hardly ever happened in their office. Everyone was buzzing with anticipation, talking in hushed tones about the general's accomplishments and reputation. Emma noticed the excitement but remained calm. She had no interest in showing off or drawing attention to herself, yet she couldn't help but feel a little curious about meeting someone who had such a distinguished military background. The morning of the event, the office was unusually busy. Desks were tidied, papers were organized, and everyone made sure they looked presentable. The atmosphere felt tense yet electric, like the calm before a storm. Emma sat at her desk, quietly reviewing her notes and checking her work, while her coworkers chatted nervously about what the general might be like. Some speculated on his personality, others on how strict he might be. Emma simply watched the excitement with quiet interest, knowing that her focus on her work and her own values mattered more than appearances. When General Hamilton arrived, the office buzzed with energy. He walked with a quiet authority, commanding respect without needing to raise his voice. His presence was magnetic, and people immediately straightened their posture and tried to seem more professional than usual. Emma observed him with a mixture of awe and curiosity. He seemed approachable but carried a sense of discipline and honor that was unmistakable. She admired the way he interacted with everyone politely, yet firmly, making each person feel noticed without losing his composure. The award presentation began, and the general gave a short speech about dedication, courage, and integrity, values he had lived by throughout his career. He spoke about the importance of honoring the past, respecting those who served before us, and acting with honor in all aspects of life. Emma listened attentively, feeling a quiet resonance with his words. They reminded her of her father, whose teachings had shaped so much of who she was. She thought about the tattoo on her arm, the tiny emblem that carried her father's legacy, and felt a subtle connection between the general's words and the personal meaning she carried every day. After the ceremony, there was a casual meet and greet. Employees were encouraged to introduce themselves and speak with the general one-on-one. Emma was naturally hesitant to join the crowd, preferring to stay in the background. She didn't seek attention, and she certainly didn't want to stand out. But as fate would have it, she found herself gradually moving closer to the general. Drawn by the sense of respect and admiration she felt for someone who had dedicated his life to service. much like her father had. While chatting with other coworkers, Emma accidentally rolled up her sleeve slightly as she reached for her bag. It was the same small movement that had sparked teasing in the past. Some colleagues noticed the tattoo and whispered among themselves, smirking as they had before. Emma felt a familiar twinge of embarrassment, but she kept her composure. She knew that this emblem was not for them. It was for her, a symbol of the man who had taught her courage, integrity, and honor. The general noticed the subtle commotion and looked toward Emma. With a gentle smile, he asked her about the tattoo. Emma's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't expected anyone, let alone someone so distinguished, to notice or inquire about it. Hesitant at first, she explained the story behind the tattoo, how it represented her father, a retired military officer, and how it symbolized the values he had instilled in her. She spoke with quiet pride, feeling a mixture of nervousness and relief as she shared the meaning that she had carried privately for so long. Her coworkers, who had been whispering and laughing moments before, suddenly went silent. There was a noticeable shift in the atmosphere, a pause as everyone realized that Emma's small, delicate tattoo carried far more significance than they had imagined. The general listened intently, nodding as she spoke, his eyes reflecting understanding and respect. It was clear that he appreciated not only the story behind the emblem, but also the courage it took for Emma to wear it proudly, even in the face of mockery. Emma felt a sense of calm wash over her as she spoke. For the first time in a long while, she felt that the judgment and laughter of her coworkers didn't matter. Here was someone who truly understood the weight of her tattoo, who recognized its connection to service, honor, and personal legacy. Her story was no longer hidden. It was acknowledged and validated by someone who had lived a life of discipline and integrity, just like her father. As the conversation continued, Emma realized that this moment was more than just a casual meeting. It was a turning point, a subtle recognition that the quiet strength she carried was real and meaningful. Her tattoo, once a source of embarrassment in the office, had become a symbol of respect and understanding. And though the teasing had not yet disappeared completely, she knew that the small emblem on her arm had already begun to change the way people perceived her, even if only quietly at first. Little did Emma know that the encounter with General Hamilton was only the beginning. The story behind her tattoo, once a private tribute to her father, would soon be revealed in a way that would shock her coworkers and inspire respect from everyone around her. A small, simple tattoo, once mocked and misunderstood, was about to become a powerful symbol of courage, legacy, and quiet strength. After the award ceremony, the office had a chance to mingle with General Hamilton. Employees were moving around nervously, some trying to impress him, others quietly observing. Emma stayed in the background, preferring to watch and listen. She didn't want to draw attention, but as the crowd shifted, she found herself closer to the general than she expected. It was a casual moment, yet it felt important. People were talking about their projects, their experiences, and asking the general questions about his service. Some colleagues were eager to share stories, hoping to gain a word of praise or recognition from such a respected figure. Emma stayed quiet, careful not to interrupt or appear showy. She wasn't here to impress anyone. She was here simply to observe, to feel connected in some way to someone who had lived a life of discipline and honor. Then, almost by accident, her sleeve rolled up again. She was reaching for her bag, and the tiny tattoo on her forearm peeked out. A few coworkers noticed immediately and whispered, smirking quietly as they had done before. Emma felt a familiar twinge of nervousness but did not move to cover it. She had carried this symbol for years, quietly, with pride and meaning, and now it was visible again. The general, who had been speaking with another group, glanced over and noticed the small emblem. His eyes softened with curiosity. He stepped closer and asked, in a calm and respectful tone, about the tattoo. Emma froze for a moment, unsure of what to say. She had never shared its full story with anyone outside her family, and here was someone whose opinion she deeply respected, asking her to explain. With a quiet breath, Emma began to speak. She explained that the tattoo was a tribute to her father, a retired military officer who had taught her courage, honor, and integrity. She told him that the design represented a metal emblem he had earned, a symbol of the values he had instilled in her throughout her life. She spoke with gentle pride, choosing her words carefully, describing not just the design, but the story and emotion behind it. As she spoke, she noticed a change in the room. Her coworkers, who had been whispering and laughing moments before, went silent. They were curious now, watching Emma and the general intently. Emma could feel their attention, but it didn't bother her. She realized that this was the first time someone was truly listening. Not just noticing the tattoo, but understanding its significance. The general nodded slowly as she spoke. He asked a few quiet questions, showing genuine interest in the story. He didn't laugh, he didn't dismiss it, and he didn't make the situation awkward. Instead, he listened, acknowledged, and respected the meaning behind her choice. For Emma, that simple act of understanding felt powerful. After years of carrying this emblem privately, here was someone who truly recognized its value. Her coworkers, meanwhile, were struck. The subtle whispers and smirks were gone, replaced by astonishment. They had laughed at what they thought was a small, insignificant tattoo, not knowing that it carried deep personal meaning. Emma could feel their surprise and curiosity. For the first time, they weren't mocking. It was respect, mixed with a hint of embarrassment for their earlier behavior. Emma herself felt a mix of emotions. There was relief, yes, but also pride. Pride that she had carried her father's legacy with dignity, and that it was finally being recognized by someone who understood what it truly meant. The encounter with the general reminded her why she had chosen to honor her father in this way, and it reinforced the quiet strength she had always carried. During the conversation, the general shared a few stories of his own experiences in the military, subtly connecting to Emma's father's legacy. He mentioned the importance of carrying symbols of service and courage, of remembering those who had shaped one's life, and of showing respect for quiet but meaningful acts. Emma listened carefully, feeling a profound connection, not just to the general, but to her father, whose life and teachings were being acknowledged in a way she hadn't anticipated. The room seemed to hold its breath. Everyone around them sensed the significance of the moment. Emma's tattoo, once a source of embarrassment and mockery, had become a bridge between generations, a symbol of respect, legacy, and honor. Her coworkers were learning something they hadn't expected. That even a small, simple emblem could carry immense meaning if it represented something real, something lived, and something cherished. When the conversation ended, Emma felt a sense of calm and fulfillment. She had shared a part of her story that she had kept private for years, and it had been met with understanding, admiration, and respect. The general's reaction had shown her that her quiet pride in her tattoo was not misplaced. She hadn't needed to prove anything to her coworkers. She had simply carried her father's legacy faithfully, and that had been enough. And in that moment, something subtle but important shifted in the office. People who had mocked and whispered were now reconsidering their assumptions. They began to see Emma not as someone with a small, insignificant tattoo, but as a person with strength, values, and a story worth respecting. What had started as a quiet, personal symbol was now the center of attention. Not because of its appearance, but because of the courage, love, and history it represented. Little did Emma know, the moment with General Hamilton was only the beginning. Soon, her tiny tattoo would inspire a reaction that no one in the room would forget. A moment that would truly reveal the power of meaning, legacy, and quiet courage. The office was quiet now, everyone still processing the conversation that had just taken place. Emma had shared the story behind her tiny tattoo, and General Hamilton had listened with genuine respect. The energy in the room had changed. The whispers and mockery from earlier had disappeared, replaced by curiosity and awe. But what happened next would completely shock everyone present. The general, who had been listening attentively, smiled warmly at Emma. There was a twinkle in his eye, a kind of understanding that went beyond words. Then, slowly and deliberately, he rolled up his own sleeve. A hush fell over the room as everyone watched, unsure of what was happening. The anticipation was almost tangible. Emma felt her heart beat faster, sensing that this moment was about to become unforgettable. Underneath the general's sleeve was a tattoo strikingly similar to Emma's. It was the same emblem, the same design, though it had the marks of age and time. It was clear that the general had carried it for decades, a symbol of honor, service, and personal legacy. The room went completely silent. The colleagues who had whispered, snickered, and mocked Emma's small tattoo just moments before now stared in astonishment. Some mouths hung open, eyes wide, unable to believe what they were seeing. Emma felt a mixture of emotions: shock, awe, and deep respect. Her private tribute, the emblem that had once made her feel self-conscious in the face of teasing, was now reflected on the arm of a man she had admired from afar. The general's tattoo wasn't just a design. It was a life story, a connection to Emma's father, and a symbol of decades of courage and integrity. She realized in that instant that her father and the general had shared experiences, values, and perhaps even missions that had left an enduring mark on both of them. The general spoke gently, his voice calm but firm. "I knew your father well," he said, his eyes meeting Emma's. "He was a man of extraordinary courage and principle. This emblem, it represents everything he stood for, everything he taught you. And now, I see it carried forward by you." His words were simple, but the weight behind them made everyone in the room pause and listen. There was no need for loud applause or dramatic gestures. The respect in his voice and the symbolism of his tattoo said it all. Emma's coworkers could hardly process what they were witnessing. The tiny, delicate tattoo they had mocked was suddenly a mark of shared history and profound meaning. The general's sleeve had revealed a connection that none of them had expected. They realized that Emma's quiet pride and patience were signs of inner strength, not something to ridicule. Those who had laughed earlier now felt a twinge of embarrassment, but also awe, as they understood that sometimes the smallest symbols carry the deepest significance. For Emma, the moment was transformative. She had always worn the tattoo to honor her father, not to gain approval or recognition. Yet now, seeing it reflected in the general's own arm, she felt an even deeper connection to her father's life, and to the legacy he had passed on. She understood that courage, integrity, and honor were not loud or flashy. They could live quietly in a symbol, a person, or even a single act of respect. The general continued to speak, sharing brief anecdotes of his time with Emma's father. He spoke of missions, decisions made under pressure, and the quiet courage that had defined both of their careers. Every word reinforced the meaning behind the tattoo, giving the office a glimpse of the life lessons that Emma had grown up with. It was as if the tattoo, once small and personal, had suddenly become a bridge between generations, connecting Emma, her father, and the general in a way no one else could fully understand. Emma noticed how her co-workers' expressions had changed. The smug looks, the teasing gestures, and the whispers were gone. In their place were signs of respect, curiosity, and even inspiration. Some leaned forward, eager to understand, while others simply watched in awe. It was a quiet lesson for everyone in the room. The true value of something isn't always visible on the surface. Sometimes, it takes patience, understanding, and an open heart to see what truly matters. The general looked back at Emma, his eyes softening. "You wear this well," he said. "Not for attention but for honor. That is how it should be." His words, simple yet profound, carried a weight that resonated through the room. Emma felt a warmth in her chest, a mixture of pride and humility. Her quiet strength had been recognized, not through loud actions, but through respect and understanding. That day, the office learned a lesson they would never forget. Emma's tiny tattoo, once mocked and misunderstood, had revealed a story of legacy, courage, and respect that none of them had anticipated. It was a reminder that appearances can be deceiving, that quiet symbols can carry enormous meaning, and that true strength is often found in the most subtle places. For Emma, the experience was life-changing. She realized that her father's lessons, her own courage, and the respect of someone like General Hamilton were far more meaningful than the fleeting opinions of those who had mocked her. The tattoo had become a testament not just to her father's life, but to the values she carried forward, and to the enduring power of quiet strength. And as the general rolled his sleeve back down, the room remained silent for a moment longer, absorbing the lesson. Emma knew this memory would stay with her forever. The moment when her small emblem had commanded respect, revealed connections, and transformed the way everyone in the office saw her. It was the day her tiny tattoo became a symbol of honor, courage, and timeless legacy. After the shocking revelation of the general's tattoo, the office atmosphere changed completely. The once quiet whispers and occasional smirks were replaced with respect and curiosity. Emma, who had quietly endured teasing for so long, now felt a sense of calm pride. She realized that the mockery she had once feared was no longer important. The true measure of her tattoo's significance had been recognized. The general's action had shown everyone, in a powerful but quiet way, that her tiny emblem carried more weight than anyone had imagined. Her coworkers began to approach her cautiously, no longer mocking, but instead showing interest. Some wanted to know more about the story behind the tattoo. Others simply offered quiet nods or smiles, acknowledging Emma's courage and integrity. It was a subtle but profound shift. The teasing that had made her self-conscious now seemed petty and insignificant. People were learning a valuable lesson. That quiet strength and meaningful symbols deserve respect, even if they are not immediately understood. Emma felt a mixture of emotions: relief, pride, and a quiet joy. She had always carried the tattoo for herself, not for recognition. Yet now, the acknowledgement of her story, especially by someone as respected as General Hamilton, made her feel validated in a way she had never experienced before. The emblem she had feared might invite ridicule had instead become a bridge to respect, connecting her to her father's legacy and to the general who had shared a part of that history. The general took a few moments to speak more with the group, emphasizing the lessons behind the emblem. He talked about courage, loyalty, and integrity, and how these qualities could be represented in many forms, not always through words or grand actions, but sometimes in quiet, personal symbols. His words resonated deeply with Emma and with the entire office. It was as if the story of her tattoo had become a living lesson, demonstrating the power of values and legacy over appearances and assumptions. Some coworkers, previously skeptical or dismissive, began reflecting on their own actions. They realized they had underestimated Emma, judging her by a small symbol without understanding its meaning. A few approached her privately, apologizing or acknowledging that they had been wrong to laugh. Emma accepted their gestures gracefully, feeling no anger or resentment. She understood that people often judge what they cannot see, and sometimes it takes a moment like this to help them understand. Emma also felt a personal sense of closure. For years, she had carried the tattoo as a tribute to her father, a silent reminder of his courage and values. It had been a private source of strength, one that no one else could fully comprehend. But now, seeing her story recognized by someone who had known her father and had lived by similar principles brought a deep sense of connection and fulfillment. It was as though her father's presence had been acknowledged in the room, his legacy validated in a way that went beyond words. The effect on the office was remarkable. Emma noticed that people began to treat her with a new level of respect, listening more attentively when she spoke, and appreciating her insights during meetings. The quiet, small woman who had once been mocked for her tattoo was now seen as someone of depth, someone whose choices and values mattered. It wasn't a loud or dramatic transformation. It was subtle, but it changed the way people perceived her entirely. Emma felt inspired. She realized that her experience could be a lesson not just for her coworkers, but for herself as well. Life was not about seeking validation or proving others wrong. It was about staying true to your values, honoring the legacy of those who mattered to you, and carrying yourself with integrity. Her tattoo had become a symbol not just of her father, but of her own strength, resilience, and character. The general's acknowledgement also gave Emma a sense of empowerment. She understood that small, quiet actions could have a powerful impact. By wearing her tattoo with pride and not succumbing to ridicule, she had shown courage in its simplest form. And by sharing her story with the general, she had allowed a connection to be recognized that spanned generations, linking her father's legacy to her own life and even to someone as esteemed as the general. As the day went on, Emma reflected on how much had changed in just a few hours. The laughter and whispers had vanished, replaced by a quiet respect that lingered in the room. People who had once underestimated her now saw her differently. And Emma, for her part, felt a sense of peace and pride she had never felt before. The tiny tattoo, once a source of embarrassment, had become a symbol of courage, legacy, and the quiet power of meaningful actions. By the end of the day, Emma understood that this experience would stay with her forever. The moment of recognition, the respect from the general, and the change in her coworkers' perceptions had all reinforced something she had always known. That true strength is often quiet, personal, and unassuming, yet it can leave a lasting impact on those who witness it. She felt grateful for the journey, the teasing, the doubts, and the private pride she had carried, and for the way it had all led to this moment of recognition and respect. Emma's story had become more than a personal tribute. It was now an example of resilience, quiet courage, and the importance of honoring one's values. The tiny tattoo that had once invited mockery had transformed into a powerful lesson for everyone in the office, proving that respect and understanding often come to those who carry their legacy with dignity and humility. After the unforgettable moment with General Hamilton, Emma felt a quiet sense of fulfillment. Her tiny tattoo, once the subject of whispers and mocking laughter, had become a symbol of respect, courage, and legacy. The small emblem she wore had connected her not only to her father but also to someone who had shared her father's life, values, and experiences. In that instant, she realized how powerful a quiet symbol could be and how much it could change the way others perceived her. The days that followed were different. Emma noticed subtle but meaningful changes in her workplace. Her coworkers, who had once mocked her tattoo, now treated her with admiration and respect. They asked her questions about her father and the story behind the tattoo, not out of ridicule but with genuine interest. Some even shared stories of their own families, reflecting on values and lessons they had inherited. Emma listened with patience, realizing that her quiet tribute had inspired others to think more deeply about legacy, courage, and respect. Emma also reflected on her own journey. For years, she had carried the tattoo for herself alone, a private reminder of the man who had shaped her life. She had faced teasing and judgment, but she had remained composed, never trying to prove herself or seek attention. Now, she understood that her patience and quiet confidence had been noticed in ways she could not have imagined. She felt a sense of pride, not for the recognition itself, but for honoring her father in the way he had taught her, silently, respectfully, and with dignity. The general's acknowledgement had left a lasting impression, not only on Emma but on everyone who had witnessed it. His recognition showed that true understanding comes from knowledge, empathy, and respect for history. By rolling up his sleeve and revealing his own tattoo, he had connected generations, linking Emma, her father, and himself in a meaningful way. It was a demonstration of honor that transcended words, a lesson that even the smallest symbols can carry immense significance. Emma realized that the story of her tattoo was no longer just hers alone. It had become a shared experience. It had taught her coworkers humility, patience, and the importance of looking beyond appearances. They had learned that what may seem small, simple, or insignificant can actually hold a deep and enduring meaning. Emma felt gratified, not because she had proved anyone wrong, but because her quiet tribute had inspired others to respect what they had once dismissed. In the weeks that followed, the office atmosphere shifted subtly but positively. Emma's insights during meetings were taken more seriously, and her quiet leadership and thoughtful approach were noticed. The same colleagues who had once whispered behind her back now approached her with respect, seeking guidance or simply listening attentively. It was a change that reminded Emma of an important truth. Respect and understanding are earned not through loud words or dramatic actions, but through consistency, integrity, and authenticity. Emma also took time to reflect on the personal impact of the experience. Her father's lessons had guided her through moments of doubt, and now she saw how those lessons had also influenced the people around her. She realized that carrying values silently, through small actions and symbols, could have a ripple effect. The tattoo on her arm had become more than a tribute. It had become a bridge, connecting past, present, and future in a way she could not have predicted. One quiet afternoon, Emma found herself looking at the small emblem again. She thought about her father, about the general, and about the unexpected way her story had unfolded. She felt a wave of gratitude, understanding that true strength is not measured by how loudly it is displayed, but by how faithfully it is carried. The tiny tattoo, once mocked and misunderstood, had revealed its power in the most unexpected and meaningful way. Emma also noticed how the experience had shaped her own confidence. She realized that carrying her father's legacy had given her a quiet courage that extended beyond the tattoo. She was more assertive in meetings, more patient in challenges, and more willing to act with integrity even when no one was watching. Her small emblem had become a daily reminder not just of her father, but of the strength she had discovered within herself. By the time the story of the office encounter spread, Emma's experience had inspired a subtle but real change in the culture around her. Colleagues were more thoughtful, more willing to listen, and more respectful of personal choices. The lesson of the tiny tattoo became a quiet but enduring part of the office's shared understanding that respect is earned, values are powerful, and even the smallest symbol can hold an immense story. In the end, Emma felt a deep sense of peace. She had carried her father's legacy faithfully, faced teasing without complaint, and been recognized in a way that honored both him and herself. The small tattoo on her arm had become a beacon of courage, a reminder of the quiet power of personal meaning, and a testament to the lasting impact of integrity and honor. The story concluded not with loud celebrations or dramatic displays, but with the quiet acknowledgement of something far more valuable: the connection between generations, the respect earned through patience and dignity, and the enduring strength found in small, meaningful symbols. Emma had learned, and shared, a timeless truth, that the most powerful legacies are often carried quietly, close to the heart, and that sometimes it only takes a small emblem to inspire understanding, respect, and admiration in the hearts of others.